You think you're eating healthy, but your blood pressure keeps rising anyway. That's the part no one warns you about. Maybe you've already cut back on salt. You avoid fast food, skip the obvious junk, and try to make smart choices every day. And yet, those numbers on the monitor refuse to cooperate. It feels confusing, even frustrating. But what if the real problem isn't the foods you're avoiding, it's the ones you trust? High blood pressure doesn't always come from what looks unhealthy. In many cases, it builds quietly from foods that seem harmless, balanced, even responsible. The truth is, sodium doesn't just come from the salt shaker. It hides in places most people never think to check in: everyday meals, packaged items, and routine habits that slowly work against your body without any obvious warning. Here's what makes it more concerning. When sodium enters your system, your body holds on to extra water. That added fluid increases the volume of your blood, which means more pressure pushing against your artery walls. Over time, especially as the body ages, those arteries become less flexible. And that constant pressure doesn't just affect a number, it can place strain on your heart, your circulation, and your overall well-being. Many people believe they are doing everything right. They choose lighter meals, avoid adding extra salt, and stick to familiar routines. But hidden sodium has a way of slipping into breakfast, lunch, and dinner without being noticed. A small amount here, another there, and suddenly it adds up far more than expected. What's even more surprising is that some of the biggest contributors don't taste salty at all. They blend seamlessly into daily life, making it almost impossible to recognize the pattern until the effects start showing up. And that's exactly why this matters. Because by the time you discover what's really behind the problem, it's often something you've been eating regularly, something that felt safe, normal, even healthy. In fact, the number one food on this list is one that millions of people rely on every single day, believing they are making a good choice. In the next part, you'll start to see how these hidden sources of sodium are shaping your health in ways you may not expect, and why understanding them can make all the difference. It looks like a simple choice: a quick sandwich, a slice of bacon, a few pieces of deli meat. But this everyday habit may be one of the biggest reasons your blood pressure refuses to improve. Processed meats are often seen as convenient, protein-rich, and easy to include in daily meals. Bacon at breakfast, ham in a sandwich, sausage with dinner, or sliced turkey as a lighter option, it all feels normal, even responsible. But behind that convenience is a combination that can quietly put stress on your cardiovascular system. The issue is not just the meat itself, it's how it's prepared, preserved, and packaged. Processed meats are typically loaded with sodium to enhance flavor and extend shelf life. On top of that, they often contain preservatives and, in many cases, saturated fats. This combination creates a steady intake of substances that can make blood pressure harder to control over time. What makes this especially challenging is how frequently these foods appear in daily routines. Unlike occasional indulgences, processed meats tend to become habits. A little at breakfast, a little more at lunch, maybe again as a snack or part of dinner. Each portion may seem small, but the repetition throughout the day creates a cumulative effect that the body has to manage continuously. Imagine someone who believes they are eating well. Breakfast might be whole grain toast with a slice of turkey or ham. Lunch could be a sandwich with deli meat, lettuce, and mustard. Dinner might include a small portion of sausage or a prepared dish containing processed meat. On the surface, nothing looks extreme, but when you look closer, sodium is being added at every step. This pattern matters because high blood pressure is rarely caused by a single meal. It is usually the result of repeated exposure, the same ingredients, the same habits, day after day. Processed meats fit perfectly into that pattern because they are easy, accessible, and widely trusted. Another reason they are so misleading is that they are often marketed as healthy or lean. Sliced turkey, for example, is commonly perceived as a better choice than red meat. While it can be, the processed version is very different from fresh, home-cooked poultry. Once it has been cured, flavored, and preserved, its nutritional profile changes significantly. Over time, this hidden intake of sodium can lead to increased fluid retention in the body. That extra fluid raises the volume of blood circulating through your vessels, which in turn increases pressure against the artery walls. If those vessels are already less flexible due to age or other factors, the effect becomes even more noticeable. The key point here is not to create fear around food, but to bring awareness to patterns. Processed meats are not always obvious in their impact, but they are consistent. And consistency is what drives long-term changes in blood pressure. A helpful shift is to start treating these foods as occasional rather than routine. Replacing them with fresh protein sources such as home-cooked chicken, fish, beans, or eggs in balanced amounts can reduce overall sodium intake more than most people expect. Even small adjustments, when repeated daily, can make a meaningful difference. Because in the end, it's not about one meal. It's about what your body experiences again and again. And for many people, processed meats are quietly at the center of that pattern. It doesn't taste overly salty. It just tastes good. And that's exactly where the problem begins. Eating out or ordering takeout has become a normal part of modern life. It's convenient, social, and often feels like a well-deserved break from cooking. Whether it's a quick lunch, dinner with friends, or a simple meal when you're too tired to prepare food at home, it all seems harmless on the surface. But when it comes to blood pressure, these meals can have a much bigger impact than most people realize. The biggest issue is control. When you eat at a restaurant or order fast food, you're no longer in charge of how your meal is prepared. Chefs and food manufacturers often rely on generous amounts of salt, sauces, and seasoning blends to enhance flavor. It's what makes the food enjoyable and satisfying, but it also means your sodium intake can rise quickly without you noticing. What makes this even more misleading is that restaurant food doesn't always taste extremely salty. In fact, it's often carefully balanced to feel rich, flavorful, and comforting rather than overpowering. This makes it easy to underestimate how much sodium is actually in a single meal. Portion size is another factor. Meals served outside the home are often larger than what your body truly needs. That means you're not only getting more calories, but also more sodium, more fat, and more hidden ingredients in one sitting. Even something that sounds like a reasonable choice, such as grilled chicken or a simple sandwich, can come with sauces, dressings, bread, and sides that significantly increase the total load on your system. Now imagine this becoming a routine. A few meals out each week may not seem like a big deal, but over time, the pattern adds up. Your body is repeatedly exposed to higher levels of sodium, and your blood vessels have to adjust again and again. This repeated strain can make it harder for your blood pressure to stabilize, even if you are careful with your choices at home. There's also a social element that makes this habit harder to recognize. Dining out is often associated with connection, relaxation, and enjoyment. It doesn't feel like a health risk. Because of that, many people don't think to question it, especially if they believe they are eating better options. The key is not to avoid eating out entirely, but to become more aware of how it affects your overall pattern. Small adjustments can make a meaningful difference. Choosing simpler dishes, asking for sauces on the side, and being mindful of portion sizes can help reduce the impact. Even something as simple as sharing a meal or saving part of it for later can lower the total intake. At the same time, balancing restaurant meals with more home-prepared food gives you back a level of control that your body benefits from. When you know what goes into your meals, it becomes easier to manage what goes into your bloodstream. Because in the end, it's not just about one dinner or one outing, it's about how often these meals appear in your routine and how quietly they shape your health over time. It feels warm, light, and comforting, but it may be quietly raising your blood pressure. Canned soup and instant noodles are often seen as simple, practical choices. They're quick to prepare, easy to store, and especially appealing when you're tired, busy, or not feeling your best. A warm bowl can feel soothing, almost like something your body needs. But behind that comfort is a hidden factor that many people overlook. The main concern with these foods is their sodium content. To preserve flavor and extend shelf life, manufacturers add large amounts of salt. This allows the product to remain stable for long periods while still tasting rich and satisfying when heated. The result is a meal that may seem gentle, but actually delivers a concentrated dose of sodium in a short amount of time. What makes this even more misleading is how quickly these foods are consumed. Unlike solid meals that take time to chew and digest, soup and noodles are often eaten quickly. That means sodium enters your system rapidly, giving your body less time to adjust. For someone already dealing with high blood pressure, this can create a noticeable impact. Another reason these foods become problematic is frequency. They are often chosen not as occasional meals, but as regular solutions. A quick lunch, an easy dinner, or a fallback option when there's nothing else prepared. Over time, this pattern builds a consistent intake of sodium that can be difficult for the body to manage. It's also common to associate soup with health. Many people believe that anything labeled as soup must be light or beneficial. While that can be true for homemade versions, packaged soups are very different. Even varieties that appear healthy, such as vegetable or chicken-based options, can still contain high levels of sodium unless specifically labeled otherwise. Instant noodles present a similar issue. The seasoning packets included in these products are often the main source of flavor and also the main source of sodium. Even if the portion seems small, the concentration is high enough to affect your overall intake for the day. The goal is not to eliminate these foods completely, but to approach them with awareness. Choosing lower sodium versions, reducing the amount of seasoning used, or preparing simple homemade alternatives can make a meaningful difference. Even small changes, when repeated over time, can help reduce the overall strain on your system. Because in the end, it's not just about what a meal looks like, it's about what it delivers to your body. And foods that feel comforting can sometimes carry more impact than expected when they become part of a daily routine. It looks balanced, portioned, even healthy, but it may be quietly working against your blood pressure. Frozen meals and convenience foods are designed to make life easier. On busy days or when energy is low, they offer a quick solution with minimal effort. Just heat, eat, and move on. Many of these products are even labeled with words like light, fit, or balanced, which creates a sense of reassurance. But what's happening behind the label is often very different. To maintain taste after freezing and reheating, manufacturers rely heavily on sodium. Salt helps preserve flavor, improve texture, and extend shelf life. Without it, many of these meals would taste bland or unappealing. As a result, even a single frozen dish can contain a significant portion of your daily sodium intake. What makes this more concerning is how easy it is to rely on these meals regularly. They are convenient, consistent, and require no preparation. For someone living alone, feeling tired, or simply wanting to avoid cooking, frozen meals can quickly become part of a daily routine. And just like that, sodium intake becomes a repeated pattern rather than an occasional event. Another factor is how these meals are structured. They often include multiple components: sauces, seasonings, processed proteins, and side dishes, all combined into one package. Each element may contribute a small amount of sodium, but together they create a total that is much higher than expected. Even options that seem healthier, such as vegetable-based meals or lean protein dishes, can still contain high levels of sodium. The flavor has to be preserved through freezing and reheating, and salt plays a major role in making that possible. This is why the front of the package can feel reassuring, while the nutritional details tell a different story. Over time, regularly consuming these meals can lead to a steady increase in sodium intake. This encourages the body to retain more fluid, which raises the volume of blood in circulation. As that volume increases, so does the pressure against the walls of your arteries. When this happens repeatedly, it becomes harder for the body to maintain stable blood pressure levels. The solution is not to eliminate convenience entirely, but to use it more intentionally. Choosing simpler frozen ingredients like plain vegetables or unseasoned proteins allows you to control what gets added. Building quick meals from basic components can offer the same convenience with less hidden impact. Because in the end, convenience should support your health, not quietly work against it. And small adjustments in daily choices can make a meaningful difference over time. It's just a small snack, nothing serious, right? That's exactly how this habit quietly adds up. Salty snacks like chips, crackers, and roasted nuts are often seen as harmless fillers between meals. You might grab a handful while watching TV, a few crackers with tea, or a small bowl of snacks when you're not even that hungry. It doesn't feel like a full meal, so it doesn't feel like it matters, but your body doesn't see it that way. These foods are specifically designed to be easy to eat and hard to stop. They deliver a combination of salt, crunch, and flavor that keeps you reaching for more without much thought. Even if you tell yourself it's just a little, the actual amount consumed can quickly grow beyond what you realize. The main concern is sodium. Each serving contains a concentrated amount, and because portions are often underestimated, intake can become much higher than expected. Unlike a structured meal where you are more aware of what you're eating, snacking tends to happen automatically. This makes it one of the easiest ways for sodium to accumulate throughout the day. Another issue is frequency. snacks are rarely a one-time event. They often become part of a daily routine, something you do in the afternoon, in the evening, or whenever you feel bored or tired. Over time, this repeated pattern creates a steady flow of sodium entering your system, even if each individual portion seems small. There's also a psychological factor. Because snacks don't feel like real food, people don't count them the same way. A meal is something you remember and consider, but snacks fade into the background. This disconnect makes it harder to recognize how much they are contributing to your overall intake. For someone managing blood pressure, this pattern matters. Sodium encourages the body to retain fluid, increasing the volume of blood circulating through your vessels. When that volume rises, so does the pressure against the artery walls. And when this happens regularly, it becomes more difficult for your body to maintain balance. The goal is not to eliminate snacking, but to make it more intentional. Choosing unsalted or lightly seasoned options, controlling portion sizes, and being aware of how often you snack can reduce the overall impact. Simple alternatives like fresh fruit, plain nuts, or homemade snacks can provide satisfaction without the same hidden load. Because in the end, it's not the occasional snack that makes the difference, it's the pattern. And small habits, repeated daily, often shape your health more than you expect. It feels rich, satisfying, even nutritious, but it may be adding more pressure than you realize. Cheese and high-fat dairy products are often seen as good sources of protein and calcium. They're comforting, familiar, and easy to include in meals. A slice of cheese on toast, a sprinkle over vegetables, or a creamy addition to a dish can make food feel complete. Because of this, many people use them daily without giving it much thought. The challenge comes from what these foods contain. Many types of cheese are high in sodium, especially processed varieties like slices, spreads, and packaged shredded blends. At the same time, they often contain saturated fats, which can influence overall cardiovascular health when consumed frequently. This combination creates a situation where two different factors are working together in a way that can make blood pressure harder to manage. What makes this especially important is how often cheese appears throughout the day. It's rarely just one serving. It can show up at breakfast, lunch, snacks, and dinner, each time adding a small amount. Individually, those portions may seem harmless, but when combined, they create a steady intake that your body has to process continuously. Another reason this pattern is easy to miss is perception. Cheese is not usually thought of as a high-sodium food. It doesn't have the obvious salty taste that some processed foods do. Because of that, it often escapes attention, even when it becomes a regular part of meals. Over time, this repeated intake can contribute to fluid retention in the body. As fluid levels increase, so does the volume of blood moving through your vessels. This raises the pressure against artery walls, especially in individuals whose circulatory system is already under strain. The goal is not to remove cheese entirely, but to adjust how it is used. Thinking of it as an addition rather than a main component can help reduce overall intake. Choosing smaller portions, selecting lower sodium options, and balancing it with fresh, less processed foods can make a meaningful difference. Because in the end, it's not about a single ingredient. It's about how often it appears and how it fits into your daily pattern. And small adjustments, repeated consistently, can support better balance over time. It doesn't taste salty, but you eat it every single day. And that's where the real impact begins. Bread, sandwiches, wraps, and other everyday starches are often seen as basic, harmless foods. They're part of breakfast, lunch, and sometimes even dinner. A slice of toast in the morning, a sandwich at noon, maybe a wrap or roll later in the day. It feels normal, balanced, and far from anything that might affect your blood pressure. But the issue isn't how these foods taste, it's how often they show up. Most bread products contain sodium, even when they don't taste salty. It's added during processing to improve texture, control fermentation, and enhance flavor. A single slice may not seem like much, but when consumed multiple times a day, the total can add up quickly without being noticed. What makes this more complicated is how these foods are typically eaten. Bread is rarely consumed alone. It often comes with deli meats, cheese, sauces, or spreads, each adding another layer of sodium. By the time you finish a simple sandwich, the combined effect is far greater than expected. Another factor is routine. Unlike occasional treats, bread-based meals are consistent. They become part of daily structure, something you rely on without thinking. And because the pattern feels stable and familiar, it's easy to assume it's also safe. Even options labeled as whole grain or multigrain can still contain significant amounts of sodium. While they may offer better fiber and nutrients, they are not automatically low in salt. This creates a situation where a healthy choice can still contribute to a hidden buildup over time. For someone managing blood pressure, this pattern matters. Regular intake of sodium encourages the body to retain fluid, increasing the volume of blood in circulation. As that volume rises, it places more pressure on the walls of your arteries. When this happens repeatedly, it becomes harder for your body to maintain balance. The solution isn't to avoid bread entirely, but to become more aware of how often and how much you consume. Choosing lower sodium options, adjusting portion sizes, and balancing meals with fresh, less processed foods can help reduce the overall impact. Because in the end, it's not about one sandwich. It's about the daily pattern and the small choices that quietly shape your health over time. It's just a small drizzle, but it can change everything. Bottled sauces, dressings, and condiments are often the most overlooked sources of sodium in a daily diet. A splash of soy sauce, a spoonful of salad dressing, a bit of ketchup or barbecue sauce, each one seems too small to matter. But these extras are often where sodium hides the most. The reason is simple. These products are designed to enhance flavor quickly and intensely. To achieve that, manufacturers rely heavily on salt, along with other ingredients that boost taste. Even a single serving can contain more sodium than expected, and most people use more than the suggested amount without realizing it. What makes this even more deceptive is how we think about food. When something is used as a topping or a side, it doesn't feel like a main part of the meal, so it doesn't get counted the same way. You might blame the bread, the meat, or the rice, but the real impact may be coming from what's added on top. Another issue is repetition. These condiments are used across multiple meals throughout the day. A little at breakfast, more at lunch, and again at dinner. Each time adds another layer, creating a pattern that quietly increases sodium intake over time. Even products labeled as low-fat or light can be misleading. When fat is reduced, flavor often needs to be replaced, and salt is one of the easiest ways to do that. This can turn a seemingly better choice into something that still places strain on your system. For someone managing blood pressure, this pattern matters. Sodium encourages the body to hold on to fluid, increasing the volume of blood circulating through your vessels. As that volume rises, it puts more pressure on artery walls, especially when it happens repeatedly. The key is not to remove flavor, but to choose it more carefully. Using fresh ingredients like herbs, garlic, lemon juice, or simple homemade dressings can provide taste without the same hidden load. Because in the end, it's often the smallest additions that make the biggest difference, especially when they happen every day. It doesn't come on a plate, but it can still affect your blood pressure more than you think. Sugary drinks like soda, sweet tea, and flavored coffee are often overlooked when people try to eat healthier. Many focus on food choices while forgetting what they drink throughout the day. A sweet coffee in the morning, a soft drink in the afternoon, maybe another flavored beverage later. It feels normal, even harmless. The concern is not just sugar itself, but how easily it adds up. Liquid calories don't create the same feeling of fullness as solid food, so it's easy to consume more without noticing. Over time, this can lead to weight gain, which is closely linked to higher blood pressure. There's also a deeper effect inside the body. Regular intake of sugary drinks can influence how your body handles insulin and energy. This may increase inflammation and make it harder for your blood vessels to function smoothly. As a result, maintaining stable blood pressure becomes more difficult over time. Another reason this habit is easy to miss is perception. Many people believe they don't consume much sugar because they avoid desserts, but sugar in drinks often goes unnoticed. It becomes part of a daily routine rather than an occasional treat. The pattern matters more than any single drink. When sweet beverages are consumed regularly, they create a steady influence on your body's balance. Even small amounts, repeated every day, can shape long-term outcomes. A helpful step is to become more aware of what you drink. Replacing sugary options with water, unsweetened tea, or simple alternatives can reduce the overall load without making drastic changes. Gradually adjusting taste preferences also makes the transition easier and more sustainable. Because in the end, it's not just what you eat, it's what you sip throughout the day. And small choices, repeated consistently, can have a lasting impact on your health. It's not just the salt you see, it's the salt you don't notice that matters most. When people think about high blood pressure, the first thing that comes to mind is salt. And that's not wrong. Sodium plays a central role. But the real issue is not just how much salt you add to your food, it's how much your body is holding on to throughout the day. Here's how it works in a simple way. When you consume sodium, your body tries to maintain balance by retaining water. This extra fluid increases the volume of blood circulating in your system. And when that volume rises, it creates more pressure against the walls of your arteries. Over time, especially as the body ages, blood vessels may become less flexible. This makes it harder for them to adjust to changes in pressure. As a result, even small increases in fluid volume can have a more noticeable effect on overall blood pressure. What makes this challenging is that sodium doesn't always come from obvious sources. Many people reduce the salt they add during cooking, but still consume large amounts through everyday foods. This creates a situation where effort doesn't always match results. The key idea is balance, not elimination. Your body needs a certain amount of sodium to function properly. But when intake becomes too frequent or too high, the system shifts in a way that makes pressure harder to regulate. Understanding this mechanism helps explain why small daily habits matter so much. Because in the end, it's not one meal that shapes your blood pressure, it's the pattern your body experiences over time. It's not one bad meal, it's what you do every single day that shapes your blood pressure. By now, one thing should be clear. The real problem isn't just specific foods, it's the pattern. High blood pressure doesn't usually come from a single choice. It builds quietly through repetition. The same meals, the same snacks, the same habits, repeated over time. And often, the foods causing the most impact are the ones that feel normal, convenient, and easy to trust. That's why trying to change everything at once rarely works. It becomes overwhelming, and most people give up before they see results. A better approach is to focus on what you do most often. Look at your daily routine and identify the 2 or 3 foods that appear again and again. Start there. For example, if processed snacks are part of your evening habit, begin by adjusting that one area. If you rely on convenience meals several times a week, try replacing just a few of them with simpler, fresher options. Small changes, when repeated consistently, create a much stronger impact than drastic changes that don't last. Another helpful step is awareness. Pay attention to what you eat without judgment. Notice patterns rather than blaming yourself. When you understand where sodium and other hidden factors are coming from, it becomes easier to make better choices without feeling restricted. It's also important to make those better choices easier to follow. Keep lower sodium options within reach. Prepare simple meals in advance. Choose foods that don't rely on heavy processing. When healthier options are convenient, they naturally become part of your routine. Progress doesn't come from perfection. It comes from consistency. Even small improvements can support your body over time, helping it respond more effectively and maintain better balance. If this information helped you see your habits more clearly, take a moment to reflect on one change you can start today, just one. Because the path to better health is not built in a single step, it's built through the choices you repeat every day.